Good morning, Minister. With just 6 minutes left, I want to quickly dabble into the aviation fuel tax. You remember that tax that you put on fuel. I guess this is now heading into the third year of that plan. I'm wondering if they've since, or if your ministry has since done any economic impact with regard to the implementation of the aviation fuel tax since its inception. Any impact, economic impact whatsoever?
So we did have some impact as we established it. Do you, just a moment. I'll just see if I.
The aviation fuel tax, when it was introduced, we did take a close look at some of the potential impacts, and we are continuing to do so. As of this point, we want to keep a close eye on what any impacts may be before we decide on any actions.
So you did, prior to the implementation of the fuel tax, you did do an assessment as to potentially the impacts of what?
We did take a look at different airlines, communities.
Could you provide that information to the committee prior to and after any analysis that you've in fact done? Provide that to the committee?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, good. And that would also be, so the economic impact, but would you also impact perhaps traveler loss to other jurisdictions? Would that also be in the criteria perhaps?
Review the impact immediately following as it related to competing jurisdictions. And in fact, we saw an increase in activity in our major airport, in fact.
Well, you'll want to provide that to us too then.
Absolutely.
We'll make a note of that, of course. So you may or may not know, but the the Minister federally Transport Canada Review Act was released this past February, and that review recommends. I'm not sure if you've seen it yet, but that review recommends that the Government of Canada work with the provinces to further improve cost competitiveness by reducing or eliminating aviation fuel taxes on international travel, where these still exist, of course. Now, this report has begun those discussions. I guess my question is, have you had any discussions federally with your counterparts on eliminating that aviation fuel tax?
It is something that we're looking and addressing, because I believe, and maybe you can expand upon the degree of taxes imposed by the federal government in its totality versus what the province actually have, and it's substantially different, is it not?
Yes, their regime is quite different. It is true Ontario does have a tax on international flights. We're aware of some of those concerns, and we are taking a look closely. A couple of things to keep in mind.
And I guess just quickly, if I can interrupt, Minister, will you commit to...
So I believe the federal component of the taxes that are affecting the traveling is substantially, what is the total versus all in versus what the province charges?
Well, but the point is, there's an international tax. There's a tax on international flights by our province. Yeah. So, will you commit to working with your federal counterparts now that you've got a federal partner, of course, to actually
right? And we did address the fact that I'm trying to remember now the degree of total taxes imposed by the federal government on these flights versus the province of Ontario.
There are a lot of additional federal charges.
That's what I'm getting at.
I'll see if I can find
So my question is, will you work with the federal government to potentially exempt that tax on international flights in Ontario? Will you commit to working with the federal government?
We always work with the federal government, and we're trying to work with them on a number of initiatives to try to ensure that we remain competitive in Ontario on a number of fronts. So
earlier this year, and you probably saw it, the president of the Thunder Bay Chamber of Commerce was clear that taxes on aviation fuel were hurting Northern Ontario's economy. Of course, we've got our Northern member here, Vic, as well. I'm sure he'll want to chime in potentially, but we've got just a brief amount of time left. So she indicated that your 1 penny annual increase just adds to the cost of business in areas already paying abnormally high fuel costs. Has your ministry done studies on the impact of the AFT on travel to and from our northern communities? And I'm assuming that would have been included in the economic impact.
Correct. Provincially,
but specifically in Northern Ontario. It would have encompassed all our airports throughout the province, correct? I'm assuming that.
As I said, we did do an assessment of the impact on the economy, recognizing, and we had some mitigation that was being proposed. And we can certainly get back to you on
what were some of the findings, if you can just share with us today?
Well, as I said, we actually had a pickup in activity, of airline activity, even after it was done. Quite a substantive amount of increases occurred in the major airports. activities
what
throughout.
about-
And then what we did is we found other ways to mitigate satellite imaging and so forth for some of the landings to facilitate some of the rural communities, but I can get you some further backup.
What about-
I'll see
Mr.
what I can
Harris,
do to
you've got
for.
about 20 seconds.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to seeing those reports. If we can make that noted, that we'll get those reports, that'd be great. Thanks, Minister, for your time today, Deputy.
Thank you, Mr.